It's Anthony Allen Ramos, and we are continuing to celebrate National Reading Month by featuring LGBTQ authors as part of our ongoing Books, Not Bans campaign. This week, we're chatting with Harry Woodgate. Their LGBTQ inclusive kids book, Grandads Camper, is out now. Harry, very nice to see you. Before we get started, I would love it if you could just read maybe a small passage from Grandads Camper for us.
Sure, let me find a nice page. Cool. So this is Grandad reminiscing about some of the adventures that he used to go on with his late husband, Gramps, in a vintage camper van. So soon after we met, he invited me on vacation with him. So we set off in his camper to the seaside. In the daytime, we surfed, ate fish and chips, and had a sandcastle competition. I think I won. In the evenings, we'd have bonfires on the beach and watch the tide going in and out of the bay. One afternoon, Gramps said to me, "There are so many wonderful things in this world, and I want to see them all with you." So that's exactly what we did.
And, you know, we talked when the book first came out. Like I said, I'm such a fan of it. It's so great. And I love the story and just the potential for young people to read it. But unfortunately, we are in this moment across here in the United States where these LGBTQ inclusive books are getting banned in various states. Unfortunately, it's a very hot topic issue that GLAAD is taking on. I know for your book specifically, it came up that it was actually trying to be banned in Mississippi. What is your reaction to all of this, that is happening?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like my first emotional reaction is just disappointment and sadness for the fact that this ultimately means, if these bans are successful, then queer kids don't get to see themselves in books. Queer families don't get to share books with the kids to sort of show, this is how different families can be. These are all the different ways that you can express yourself. So obviously, like on an emotional level, it's quite upsetting to see it sort of go, as a wave throughout all these different states and all these different instances. And then obviously, like on a professional level, it is something that then kind of casts a worry as authors and as illustrators, because if books keep on getting banned and if the market kind of reduces for these, queer positive books, then that makes it quite a difficult situation for authors to get their books sold and for publishers to be able to justify, taking these books on. So yeah, it's disappointing, it's disgusting, but I guess my focus is just on how can we be louder, how can we continue publishing and writing and illustrating stories that kind of counter that narrative and show actually that being queer is actually quite boring. Like, it's a wonderful thing, but we are just exactly the same as anyone else. And how can we sort of show that to kids through books?
Yeah, and is it something that you've seen happen in the UK at all? Because we're talking about specifically what's happening here in the United States with various LGBTQ inclusive books being banned. But is that something that's happening, in the UK where you are?
So I haven't personally experienced any instances where a book of mine has been banned in like a library setting or a school setting. There have been instances where, for example, author events have been cancelled. There was one quite high profile one recently in which an author's event was cancelled by an archdiocese, and it created quite a public outcry, for good reason. I think generally the sort of the main problem we have over here is the quite I suppose for lack of a more polite word, virulent strain of media coverage, especially regarding trans people and high profile people in media and journalism in general, but also in the publishing and children's publishing industry, putting forth quite bigoted, very harmful views about gender identity, and that kind of seems to be a place where we're having a lot of problems at the moment.
Why do you think, with this book specifically, Grandads Camper, why is it important? Why is it necessary? And what do you hope that kids and families that do find it, hopefully, what do you want them to what's the message? What do you want them to take away?
With Grandads Camper, I think there are a few sort of things that I was thinking about when I was writing. And obviously one of them being this theme of having queer elders shown in children's books. It's not like being LGBTQ is a new thing. So we really need to be seeing more books that show whole families who are within the LGBTQ community. So that is one big thing that was important to me, but also just generally, like, it's not just it's not an issue book. It's a book about grief. It's a book about honoring loved ones. It's a book about family and having fun together in adventures. And so all those kind of universal themes, are equally as important.
And what do you think for yourself? Like, if you would have, when you were growing up as a young person and you were able to have one of these books like that, what would that have meant for you?
This is something that I've written about recently. And so I grew up kind of what I've called the long shadow of Section 28. So Section 28 is essentially quite similar to some of these Don't Say Gay bills that we're seeing over in the States, in that it prohibited really anything about LGBTQ people, identities, communities being spoken about or taught in educational settings. And so that was repealed in 2003. And even though, like, most of my school years were after that, the effect was still there. There was a lack of books. There was a lack of willingness to talk about non-heterosexual, non-cisgender identities. And so to be able to have books that openly talked about it, that openly celebrated it, it stops it being this other thing. It normalizes it. It makes it accessible. It shows kids that there's nothing wrong with it, that actually maybe some of the things that they're struggling with have quite a simple, normal solution, and they don't have to go through however many years of wondering what is wrong with them to then, learn about it in adulthood and have gone through all of that pain to find out actually that it's something that should be celebrated.
What has it been like for you to be able to see some of the people that have read this book, that have loved it, whether they've messaged you on social media? I mean, because there is, a lot of heaviness and unfortunate situations happening, but there's also, I'm sure that people have really reached out and said what it means to them to see this story in a kid's book.
Yeah, there have been some really lovely messages. And also some really, like, personal messages of people who sort of said, like, I haven't seen this part of my family represented in a book ever before, and this book does that, so thank you so much. And from those kinds of messages, and also like teachers coming and saying, like, this has been a really useful resource in school settings, all of it is very affirming and very fulfilling, and it just sort of reaffirms my belief and my sort of motivation to continue writing queer positive books and making as much of a difference as I can. Yeah.
Well, we're so happy that you have written this book, and I'm sure you have many others in the works that we can't wait to read. But yeah, just a reminder, everyone, you can find out more information about our Books Not Bans campaign on our website. We're doing a lot of work to make sure that these books are available for kids and families and beyond. Grandads Camper is available right now. But Harry, it's very nice to catch up with you. And hopefully, you know, everyone can get their hands on that book.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for chatting. It's been wonderful to talk to you.